Charlotte by Idaho Kangaroo. The day I met Charlotte, she was wearing a men's dress shirt tucked into a modest length skirt and knee-high socks coming out of a pair of red high-top sneakers. The top 3 or 4 buttons on her shirt were undone. She was just barely 5 feet tall with short blonde hair. She only smoked at parties and when she drank, which meant she went through half a pack a day. Her voice was soft and high-pitched, though I suspect it was an affectation. She was 5 months short of 16 and a sophomore in high school. I never once saw her wearing pants, only skirts, dresses, and Daisy Dukes when things heated up. She was on the verge of tastefully thick and overweight, but she always bragged that the weight went straight to her tits. She wasn't lying. She did my makeup for theater and it looked great. By that point I was a completely different person than when we met. The day I met her I was wearing a navy blue sweatshirt and a pair of khaki jeans. I wasn't much to look at back then. My hair was a muddy brown, piled on my head like a greasy helmet. I never even heard the word pomade. The pads on the temples of my glasses had long been worn down by distracted gnawing. I had yet to start breaking out in agony like I do now, but if I had, I would never have done anything to remedy it. I had, to my credit, finally started taking regular showers. But it was not for hygiene's sake. I'll get to that in a little bit. I had a pair of white Converse sneakers that are still going strong. My build could charitably be called skinny fat. I didn't even have the faint abs that some dreadfully skinny guys have, just a small sad lump of fat. I turned 17 the same day she turned 16. I never touched a drop of liquor, and still haven't. You'll soon see that is my one good character trait. We met in a school theater. It was a new venue, only a few years old. It could seat about 500 in nice new movie theater seats with fabric cushions instead of the hard seat chairs with fold-out desks that the old theater had. The stage was worn and scratched, though I've never seen a stage that didn't bear the marks of a few big set pieces hastily wheeled on and off. There were little bits and pieces of electric tape used for blocking in the last couple of performances, and the walls had felt ties at odd angles to improve the acoustics. See, in this theater, unlike the old one, when you spoke it could be heard all the way in the back without a trace of echo. We really did not deserve something so nice. The day we met she was sitting patiently by herself in the back of the theater, waiting to get called up for her audition. It was a Thursday in December, a few days after auditions for the one-act plays. I'd been lucky enough to get the lead role, and now we were waiting around for the director to arrive. I was sitting a respectful distance away with Carl. Carl was a freshman who was once incredibly Christian and incredibly horny, 2 things that shouldn't go together, but often do. Carl wanted me to introduce me to this new girl. "That's a terrible idea," I said. He laughed. "No, it's not." "When has this ever worked for you?" "This time he's good." "I don't even know her, dude," I said. "What could me introducing you to her possibly accomplish?" You break the ice for me," he said. For Carl, talking to girls is like driving in a freezing lake. He won't do it on his own, and if you try and ease him into it, he backs out immediately. All you can do is throw him in and watch him flail. "Hey you," I shouted to the girl down the way. "My friend here has been staring at your tits since you sat down." "I noticed," she shouted back, "but so were you." I stood up and shuffled down the road to the chair directly adjacent to her. "Sorry about that," I said. "Was it that obvious?" "I'm used to it, don't worry," she said. "I take it as a compliment." "Most girls don't see it that way," I responded. "It wouldn't be fair to show so much and not expect people to look," she said. Jesus. Truly this was a girl sent from heaven. Here she was spoon-feeding me the same kind of weird sexist shit I love to hear. Where could you find such a cool, down-to-earth girl? And in drama club? My god, what are the odds? I guess she was a freshman from her height, and the fact that I'd never seen her before. I was wrong. She was a sophomore. So have you done this before?" I said. "Theater?" she replied. "Nah, I'm a choir girl, and my friend said this was a good place for us to branch out." "Where are they right now?" "Didn't make it." "Rough." I paused, searching for something. anything to boost her ego. I'm sure you gave it hell. I still cringed at that line. She laughed. I did okay. I'm an extra. How about you? Lead role. Don't know exactly what it is. I've never heard of this play before. Me neither. Congrats on the role. Not too much of an accomplishment. I know the director well. It's still worth something. This went on for a good while. The director, an old friend and senior who had a knack for tardiness, showed up and we went forward. The first rehearsal went well. My one talent as an actor was my voice. During that rehearsal, the director sat in the furthest row back end of the performance. My voice was loudest and clearest. My actions were exaggerated, my line reading stilted. There was no subtlety and no craft. I've always gotten by on volume rather than content. I should have caught up with Charlotte after that. I should have got her name too. There was, however, one critical piece of information that she let slide in our little chat. She wanted to get fucked by her chemistry teacher. Mr. Branson was the kind of guy that made you wonder why he'd choose to be a teacher. He really didn't have to. He was a good 3 inches taller than me with a well-maintained goatee that looked a lot cooler 4 years ago. Before he had worked as a teacher, I worked in a steel mill as a chemical engineer. One day someone called in sick and the foreman made him work at one of the machines. He only knew how they worked in theory and had never actually used one before. Within minutes of trying to work the thing, he smashed his hand with the press and was sent to the hospital. He won a couple $1 million in a lucrative settlement with the company that ran the mill, and faced with the prospect of never having to work again, he decided to become a high school chemistry teacher. Mr. Branson was a nice guy. I had him at physics at the hour before he taught Charlotte. He always dressed in business casual, sometimes with a lab coat. For example, a pair of polished brown jersey with light grey slacks, a blue dress shirt and a red tie. I was always impressed by the lengths he went to for a job as a high school science teacher. I was about to go to those same lengths myself. After a couple of weeks of theater practice and conversations with Charlotte, my wardrobe had taken on a new life. Gone were the days of the ratty blue sweatshirt and the worn-out jeans. Gone were the days of the worn-down Vans. The first day we went off book, I wore a white dress shirt with a pair of black pants that didn't quite fit right. I had on a yellow tie, and my dress shoes were scuffed and worn. She was dressed in the best approximation of a Catholic schoolgirl outfit, but with the play pattern on her skirt replaced with a solid pink and with multicolored stripes running down her knee-high socks. As always, the shirt was worn as low as the dress code allowed. Part of me has trouble remembering this. It all seems like it didn't happen that way. The sad thing is, it's all true. That day we cut things off early. Our rehearsal was done and the more serious competition one-act performers were restlessly awaiting the theater space. Charlotte and I left the theater together. I had convinced Carl to walk home, a considerable sacrifice for him to make, given that it was early January and he lived a good 15-minute walk away from school. I had promised that I would give him a copy of an old essay for his English class. I never did. Charlotte and I pushed through the classhouse at the school's exit and into the blistering cold of the parking lot. She took a pack of chemists from a messenger bag, threw one from a pack, and lit it with a cheap gas station big lighter. She offered me one. I declined. Are you really going to wait here for your mom to come? I asked. You don't have to be here, she said. I don't mind the cold, I said, but your legs might as well be bare. I didn't know you went into legs. We've all got our things. You know, you can always offer me a ride home. I wouldn't want to be too forward. I'm freezing my ass off here, and if my mom catches me smoking again, she'll go nuts. Besides, there are worse things in the world than a car ride with a cute guy like you. She knew me too well. The ride to her place was uneventful. We made small talk. We knew our roles by heart. I was the authority figure, the grown-up, the one we knew a lot and played things safe. She was the temptress, the forbidden fruit, the good girl gone bad. I didn't like her smoking in the car. Could you put it out? I said. Why's that? She said. She had me by the balls with that one. The blood rushed through my body. I felt like the bottom fell out and my gut spilled over the seat and ran down onto my feet on the pedals. She hadn't laid a hand on me, but I felt like it was in a vice. I hadn't felt that in a while. It's bad for your health, I said, assuming the role of a concerned school teacher. And don't you only smoke when you drink? She laughed. Is that what I told you? Something to that effect. I was gripping the wheel of my shitty Dodge Neon as tightly as I could. I was playing it cool, but the blood rushing to my face gave me away. She cranked the handle that rolled down the side windows of the car. She flicked the cigarette out the window and rolled it back up. Better? She asked. I'll take it. We were at the curb outside her house. I was filled with the kind of nervous confidence only an unfathomably horny teenage boy can be possessed by. I knew what her game was. Hell, I was playing into it a little bit. But this next step took guts, and they were still pulled up at my feet. Whatever seized me to do what I did next has yet to surface again. I grabbed her by the neck, pulled her in, and kissed her. I don't want to romanticize things. This was a C-plus kiss topped. It lasted for about 3 seconds too long. I was still at that stage where I didn't quite know what to do with my tongue, and the teeth clashed against mine in an uncomfortable amount. She tasted like cigarette smoke and mint, and I'm sure I wasn't much better. But it was enough. It was what was needed. After we broke contact, I sat still for a second and looked her in the eyes. She broke character and simply said, "Wow." I couldn't help myself. I kissed her again. I was ready to go right then and there, but she pulled away. She had to go inside. Her mom would worry. I drove home terrified. The next morning I was still reeling from shock. I still had go to Mr. Branson of physics first hour. I looked him in the eyes as I walked into class wearing a light blue button-up shirt tucked into the same black dress pants as the day before with a black tie. He was in a purple short sleeve button-up with a no tie and khaki pants. He was in the kind of shape necessary to pull off a shirt like that. It was tight against his upper arm with no slack hanging loose. "Looking sharp, Mr. Nickerson," he said with a grin. "What's the occasion?" "Just for nugget, I guess," I said. "It fits you well." "Thanks." I could hardly look him in the eye. I sat down next to a close friend of mine who was unaware of the situation between me and Charlotte. "What's up with you, man?" my friend said. "You've been acting kind of funny lately." "I don't want to talk about it," I responded curtly. I'm still not fond of telling the story. The rest of the class was like pulling teeth. I couldn't look at Mr. Branson. The lecture was boring enough on its own. But the knowledge that I was imitating him for a girl I hardly knew was enough to make the time track on. I left the class that day without looking back. Rehearsal was, by comparison, a much nicer affair. I mostly ignored Carl, much to his dismay. But the tension with Charlotte demanded special attention. We met in the dressing room backstage. We weren't alone, so I kept things alone. I was almost too afraid to mention what had happened last night. It was basically nothing in the grand scheme of things. I felt like a safe topic of discussion would be the cast pot that was being thrown in a few days of anticipation of the week before dress rehearsal. We agreed to go together in my car. She wanted me to bring her friends with us. I told her Carl would come with us too. Our deal was struck. Before I go on any further, I should let you know that I have very basic criteria to determine if going to a social function is worth it. I call it the jerking off in the shower index. It's really quite simple, honestly. I long ago discovered that masturbation is greatly enhanced by the presence of running hot water, dim lights, and the dulcet tones of Arcade Fire softly playing on an old waterproof Bose speaker we had. Rather than the fear of getting walked in on and the cold silence of my bare room, I was surrounded by warmth and white noise, and to top it off, cleanup is a breeze. This usually takes 30 minutes, and especially then, it was the highlight of my day. If I am to go and do something, I want it to at least be better than jerking off in the shower. I decided this might very well be it. The drive to the party that night was an experience unto itself. My tiny Dodge Neon filled with Charlotte, her two friends on either side, and Carl sitting up front. Carl's attention was now diverted to a girl named Ashley, who was a skinny goth chick who liked the color black and professed to hating all men. I thought she sucked. Looking back on it, I don't blame her. She never expressed an ounce of interest in Carl, and I don't know why he fixated on her. He would be stuck on her for another year after this. The car was filled with noise and smelled like exhaust. I was freezing cold because the car was almost out of coolant and it didn't warm up. Charlotte's friends wouldn't stop gushing about a guy named Jack. I met her eyes in the rearview mirror. She showed me a look that said she was already sick of this. I felt the same way. The party took place at Kid named Ian's house. I was used to McMansions. They had a home theater system and a bar downstairs, and his parents didn't care if people drank because they weren't home anyways. I bought a pack of Mike's Hard Lemonade that my stepdad's brother had left the last time he was over. Nobody else in my family drank that, so I thought it would be a nice offering. I stepped out of the car wearing my very best, a pair of black pants that still didn't quite fit, with a black button-up shirt with the top button undone. I had on a slick black blazer that I had tailored. That cost most of a week's pay at Pizza Hut, a black peacoat that I stole from my dad, and a pair of neatly polished Oxfords. She wore a pale blue dress and the same pair of high tops she always wore with a navy blue winter jacket on top. Her legs were still bare. The party was ostensibly for viewing the film Heathers, the inspiration for the play we were doing. I don't remember much of that movie. I was in the front row next to Carl, sitting back in a platter recliners, feet away from a projection screens in Iron Spaceman. The surround sound was wasted on this movie. Charlotte sat at the very back next to Jack, who was finger deep in Ashley most of the movie. Charlotte told me about it after the fact. I asked her why she didn't tell them to stop. She said it was hot. After the film was over, I made my way across the bar. I poured some Sprite into a plastic cup. Charlotte grabbed one of Mike's Hard Lemonades and brought along. "You really drink that shit?" I asked. "I make fewer bad decisions when I don't drink spirits," she said. "I can tell you from experience that isn't true." I said fewer, not none. I went like this for a little while longer. The party raged on in the room outside. Someone drank an entire Bloody Mary mix without adding anything and pretended to pass out. A vape was passed around. This was just before everyone had one. Someone got Carl higher than he's ever been. Jack and Ashley moved things to the guest room. I kept needling Charlotte with little provocations. She responded back in kind. If I told her she was a hypocrite for calling herself a devout Mormon while also drinking, smoking, and kissing strange boys, she hit me back with a jab at the hypocrisy of my avowed atheism and my long-lasting love for Christmas. I told her she was pushing my buttons with the low-cut dress and the knee-high socks. She told me I was doing the same thing with my newfound affection for dress shirts and polished shoes. The roar outside the barroom had dimmed to a whisper. It was 11:15. Charlotte had nursed her drink. She made a single bottle last 2 hours. I put away a 2-liter of Sprite. I had to pee. She wanted to smoke before we left. I ducked past the remaining partygoers on the couch on the way to the bathroom. They stared at me in silence, while Carl lay on the floor, occasionally emitting a moan or grunt. I took a quick piss in the bathroom, washed my hands, and stared briefly in the mirror. Tonight's the night, I thought to myself. I exited the bathroom and walked over to my half-unconscious friend on the floor. I hoisted him by his waist and wordlessly moved him towards the stairs. As I left, I was given a piece of advice I remember to this day. "She wants you to take her panties off." Charlotte was sitting on the hood of my car as I dragged Carl half-conscious across the walk. I managed to squeeze him in the back and lay him down on his side. Charlotte was ready to go. Her house was a block away, but I drove Carl home first. I snuck him onto the couch in his living room and left as his mom came down the stairs. I dashed to my car and didn't look back. We had a chance. That much was clear. I decided to put it up to her. Where to? Do you have to ask? I pulled her in, pressed her lips against mine, and we were lost. I took her to my place, snuck in the back address past my brother's door. in my barely furnished room too depressing to masturbate in, on my mom's old bed that she used to share with my piece of shit stepdad. I hiked up her dress and took the advice I was given. I drove her home nearly wordlessly, too shocked to say much. We kissed one more time at the foot of her driveway, and she ran through the snow inside. The next day I wore a plain black t-shirt, a pair of blue jeans, and some old sneakers with my dad's old corduroy fall jacket. I walked into Mr. Branson's room. "What's wrong, Mr. Nicholson? You're usually fancier than this," he said. "It's been a weird couple of days. I'll take your word for it."